The following is a program of the Santa Barbara County Education Office. To learn more, visit sbceo.org.
Hi, I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools, and I am so delighted to introduce our guest today, Alex Posada, who's the Director of the Parks and Recreation Department for the City of Santa Maria. Alex, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Susan.
I'm really excited to have you share the story about yourself and the Parks and Rec Department that's changed over the 40 years that you've worked with it. But let's start at the beginning of your time,
Sure.
Good. Where were you born and raised?
So I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area on the East Bay in the city of Hayward. My parents worked there for the Gerber Baby Food Company.
Is that right?
Yeah, and so we had a really interesting, childhood there. We grew up kind of out in a little rural area, so we had some animals, we had a big garden, we had a lot of that kind of stuff, and we were able to go out and adventure in the fields around us. So,
do you have
it was a cool
siblings?
time. Yes, I have 4 siblings, 3 older siblings, a brother and 2 sisters, and then 1 younger sibling, my brother. So, yeah, but again, I think most of them were busy because we're spread out quite a ways. So everybody was out there doing their own thing.
Doing your own thing, and also outside.
Outside,
playing a lot.
Yeah, there was never, the be home by dark rule was in effect most of the year. So
Right, I love that. And what schools did you attend from elementary to high school?
So I was real fortunate to live across the street from my elementary school for the first 5 years, and it was called Russell, and it was again in Hayward. Then that school closed down, and then we moved us over to Linda Vista Elementary School in San Lorenzo, California.
Okay.
And then I went to Bohannon Junior High School, which was right next door, and then to Arroyo High School, also in San Lorenzo, and graduated from there. And that was back a long time ago in 1972. And then went on to San Jose State, and focused there. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so my interest was in social work. So I guess I declared that as my major, and did that, and did a minor in Spanish, and kind of worked through that program there. Yeah, it was a great school. I loved it there, but it was also during some, the gas crisis was going on, so commuting from Hayward to San Jose, which is about 30 miles, or 30 minutes rather, was always a challenge. And so finally decided I should probably move to San Jose. So I tried that for a while too. And it's like every other college student, it's like, oh yeah, that'll be fun. It wasn't that much fun.
It's hard work.
It's hard work. And then you have to have a job because you have to pay rent and those kinds of things.
Right. And so what was your job in San Jose?
So actually I worked for the city of Union City, which is a small town between San Jose and Hayward. And I started working for the rec department there. So I guess it's their fault that I got into the career. I started working in a little town called Alvarado and Dakota, and that's why this city is called Union City, because it united those 2 little communities. And each of them had a pretty distinctive youth population. They really rivals, I guess, is probably a good way of putting it. So I worked in both youth centers in both communities, so I got to know the youth around, and teens mostly, and they were challenging but just really great people. I got to really have an appreciation for what things they wanted to do, and wasn't that much older than them, so we were able to relate really well.
That's great. When you say rivals, are you saying almost like rival high schools where they would go against each other, like that kind of rivals, or something else?
Something else.
Something else. Okay. We'll leave it there
Yes.
then. All right.
Yeah.
So then, Alex, let's go back just a little bit before we go forward
Sure.
on. I'd love to have you share, how were you as a student in going to school?
I wasn't really a very good student, but I was a very involved student.
Okay.
So I think, I was probably a good high C, low B student as far as grades go. But I was involved in student government
Okay.
in high school, participated in a lot of the service groups there, real focused on the Red Cross. I started as a Red Cross volunteer in high school, so I think I was probably 15 years old maybe. And really I have been or had been a volunteer probably well into 40 years, 45 years
With
or so.
the Red Cross.
With the Red Cross. And that gave me the ability to, I think, become a pretty good leader, a pretty good speaker. They had good training opportunities for the youth that participated. And so it really, I think, kind of led me down the road of social service. It also gave me the opportunity to see how an organization like that can impact the lives of people during disasters, or in the case that when I was there, the war was on in Vietnam, and my brother was in the military. So we were able to do a thing called Voices from Home, and we would go down to down to the Macy's, and we would sit there for hours, and we would record tapes for people. Well, they could record tapes for their service person, and then the Red Cross would ship those tapes to Vietnam so that their loved one could hear them at the Red Cross Service Center there. So that was pretty cool. I thought that was really neat. So I recorded a few for my brother too. He doesn't remember getting them though. I keep asking him about it. So
I love that. I wish we could find those. We should have a
they would
project
be
to
great.
find that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what ended up happening with those, but
Right.
it gave youth again an opportunity to kind of connect with the military. Because at that time it was not a very positive thing to be in the military and to be in Vietnam. So it was some challenge, for us, but I was always just worried about him coming home. So
Right, right. In thinking about the service you provided with the Red Cross, and again, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too, because there are many agencies and organizations that you currently volunteer for now and provide service for. But it sounds like the Red Cross really opened your eyes to what it means to serve, having an organization that makes an impact internationally, really.
Yes.
And also a little bit of lessons in civics too, giving back to your own country and that impact it has on people.
Yeah, and the people that they had leading us, I think, were other, I guess the term now is a mentor, but they were just great people. I mean, you wanted to be with them. They were enthusiastic adults, but they were out there and they could relate well with you. My high school advisor in the club was Miss Inoue, and she was such a motivator with not just our group, but with other groups and as a teacher. So it's like, yeah, you have to be involved because she's a great person. Right. And then our Red Cross advisor from the Red Cross itself was another person that just oozed enthusiasm about Red Cross. And then she said, oh yeah, well that makes a lot of sense. I had a very odd job with the Red Cross as a volunteer. They would place you around the community. And again, the war was going on. So you had opportunities to be a volunteer at the Oakland Naval Hospital. And that was a little close to me because my brother was in Vietnam. So I said, I don't know that I want to do that. But they had an opportunity for me to be a volunteer at the Oakland Zoo.
Okay.
And so back then it was the Nolan Park Zoo. So I spent a couple of summers as a volunteer at the Nolan Zoo. And from my town in Hayward to the zoo was probably a good 20 miles. So you had to ride the bus to get there. So I learned to ride the public transit every day that I would work there. And I worked probably 3 or 4 days a week up there. And you got to deal with a bunch of people and animals. And it's just really, again, Red Cross, animals, the zoo, yeah. But
Who knew?
Yeah, who knew, exactly.
Who knew?
But it was a great experience.
Sounds
and
like
you got
it.
to meet a lot of great people there too. And so
Sounds very foundational for you. And that was in high school.
Yes, that was in high school, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really important. It really transfers now to high school students today where they're required to have some volunteer service, but that service and what you do, that experience can really change your life.
Yes,
Beyond the
definitely.
classroom, just volunteering in the community, which I
Definitely.
know you know so much about. So Alex, let's talk about how you got to what you just described to Santa Maria. How did you get here?
Well, it was another one of those, opportunities. So my supervisor at what was the Hayward Area Recreation and Park District, so finished up at San Jose, went to work for HARD, it's called, as the acronym. And he said, I worked for them probably a year, and he says, my old city where I used to work is looking for somebody to work with teens. He goes, have you considered maybe, looking for a full-time job? And, I said, well, no, not really. So he said, well, you should call them or go down and apply. And, we didn't have the internet or anything like that then. So, of course, we had to, mail in an application and do all those kinds of things.
Dial on the telephone.
Dial on the phone.
Right.
So I got a call, and they said, hey, would you come down for an interview? So I came down for an interview, and I guess they say the rest is history. I was selected for the job, and then I came to work for Santa Maria as what they called a recreation activity specialist.
Okay.
And so I did that, and my focus was on teens. I worked at Fessler Junior High and El Camino Junior High. We would do their teen dances and things after school. Didn't really have a real program, but it was really these kind of event kind of driven things that we would do. And then worked with the adult sports program, which was again opened up another avenue for me in meeting new people in the community, and how enthusiastic individuals are about their sports.
Right, yes. Are you saying, Alex, that the Parks and Recs department didn't exist as it does today? Are you saying that there it was more events driven and there were a couple little areas of goals, but not really a department or division?
No, not really. I think when it's kind of a back to the future thing. So when I came to town, youth programs were all over town. We had a bustling Boys and Girls Club. The Y was downtown. Everybody was doing youth programs, and as did the rec department. So when we were at the local playgrounds and schools after school around the city, it was a bustling program. Prop 13 passed, and the city's revenue declined, and so those programs kind of faded away from the city's perspective. So it challenged us to be a little bit more creative in the way we were doing things. And then simultaneously, Santa Maria starts its growth spurt.
Right.
And we do things like build the Minami Community Center, which was my first building assignment, and worked there as the facility manager, basically. And that gave the city, it really had never had a gymnasium before under its own control. We were always using somebody else's facilities. Gave us a nice community room, everything you could kind of want to have in a public facility for recreation. So that was kind of a beginning point there. So there was always programs, but it was always kind of moderated,
So 40 years you've been with Parks and Recs, and you've had different roles.
Yes.
Now you're the director. Before being a director, you started off as a facilities manager, it sounds like. I'm sure there was a very fancy title.
Yes, it was,
Beyond facilities manager, but
there
could have been that.
There always are titles.
Great, and thank you, by the way, for contributing to the Minami Center. I spent a lot of time there as a kid, and it was a lot of fun. So tell me other roles that other roles in which you served in the Parks and Recs department.
So during my time at the Minami Center, which was mostly youth sports oriented and adult sports oriented, we had one of the supervisors become ill, and so they asked if I would move up into that position till he came back. And so as things would have it, I did that role, and it happened to be youth programs, which were actually the playground programs and those kinds of things that were out there. And he wasn't able to come back. So several months later, probably a year or so later, I assumed the job of recreation supervisor. And what we called the programs back then, I was the support supervisor. My job was to make sure that the playgrounds operated, and then if somebody else was having a special event or needed help, then that we would support them. And I worked with some great people. Cal Camara was my peer there, as was Donna Mills. They were the other supervisors. And Paul Lesage, who is now an instructor over at Hancock College, was our superintendent. And we just had a good team that delivered some great programs, to the community. After that job of supervisor, our director decided to retire. And so we kind of had a little shuffle there. Mr. Lesage became the interim director, and I became the interim superintendent. And so put me in charge of the division, and which was, again, great. We did that for about 18 months or so. During that time, there was a recruitment for the director position, which I applied for, and so I was selected by the city manager back then, was Wayne Schwammel. And Wayne and I had the opportunity to work with each other on a few boards of directors for some nonprofits, Youth and Family Center in particular. And so I was fortunate to get the job. And like I say again, the rest is history.
The
I've been here
rest is
there.
history.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you, first, you've shared your pathway to being a director, but you've also shared history of Santa Maria and things that have changed over time. Let's talk specifically about parks and recs, because the parks and opportunities for youth to engage in different centers, I feel like it has expanded so much over your leadership. Where are we now in terms of the number served and number of parks, et cetera?
So number of parks right now, we're about 27. As the community's grown, our planning department has done a great job making sure that there's land set aside in these new developments for parks to come along with those residences. So Santa Maria grew, so did those number of parks. Unfortunately, the bad part about that is the number of parks grew, but our number of personnel did not grow, and our budget to maintain those parks, it was challenging to do. So the city has a system called the landscape maintenance districts, and so most of our new parks are part of a landscape district. Okay. And so the residences that benefit most from those parks in their neighborhoods pay an assessment annually for that, and also roadway medians and things. I think Santa Maria has probably one of the nicest road systems in the county, and that they're well maintained and they're landscaped, and and that is all part of the assessment districts. So in any case, staffing wise, I would say that we're about the same levels we are numbers of people wise and full-time equivalents that maybe we were back in the 90s. Okay. So that's a challenge. We have great people. I mean, our people are committed to their jobs. They love what they do. There's never any discord anywhere in the department ever. I wish, but they do. They take a lot of pride in what they do. Mm-hmm. Our Parks Division employees, show up every day and go out and clean up the parks after everybody's used them, and it's sometimes it's difficult for me to get them to understand that every job that they do, no matter how bad it may seem the day that you're doing it, makes it better for the people the next day that come in and use that park, or the next hour. And so I try to get them to look at beyond the fact that I have to pick up trash or that I have to clean the bathroom or whatever.
It's about an experience for the community,
that's
and
right.
It's really of service. The Abel Maldonado Center is a new center, I understand, under Parks and Rec. Is that right?
Well, it's older than I think now, So, so just walk you through real quickly. So Minami Center was the first facility that we created back in '79. Then the Muscle Senior Center was the next facility that was built, and that was built in '82 or '83. Atkinson Park was the city's only recreation building back in the '60s. It got a major remodel in the '80s and to where it is today. And then we started popping up all these little facilities around town. So we have neighborhood buildings at Grogan Park, up on the northwest end of town. The youth center came on board kind of on a whim, really, and that was up to Mayor Maldonado at the time. Said, we need a youth center, and I want you to build it. So when he left the city and went to the legislature, he tackled some money and he said, hey, I got you guys $1 million for a youth center. And I said, okay, great, we need another $1 million and then we can start, And so we were able to move forward and get that project built. And it's been the idea was it was going to be a magnet to bring children, young adults, to a facility where they could get some services, and that's been the focus of the program. It
is so impressive. Yes. It really is a hub for youth and families, and it's just really fantastic, right in the heart of the city.
And I wish more people would come and use it. It's always, we have an outreach coordinator, Eddie Galarza, who's out there at the junior high level drawing kids in and getting them to come to facilities, and we're hoping this summer we'll be able to expand that.
Great. I love that you've traced for us different paths. One that we haven't yet traced is you have a wife and family and grandkids too, I believe. So let's talk about them.
Okay, so my wife Julie was a rec leader here in Santa Maria when I started my job, so that's how we met. And so again, the rest is history. She went away to school up in Sacramento, and when she came back, we got married. We have adopted our first son, Juan, when he was 5.5 years old. And then he's still here in town. He's the dad of our grandkids. And so we have 3. Kalani, who's 18. So she's pretty much up there. And then Zane, who will be 7 in July, and Serenity, who will be 5 in August, I think it is. No, November. She's the Thanksgiving surprise baby. Then my other son, Elias, is local, went to St. Joseph's and graduated from there. Then attended the Brooks Institute along with some other, Hancock and City College in Santa Barbara. Graduated with his degree in film and has worked in television and film industry since he graduated. So he's in Austin. And then my daughter Corina, who graduated from Sac State a couple of years ago, is working for the Family Service Agency right now and is a mentor at Robert Bruce in Fairlawn School this past school year. I'm not sure where she'll be next year. So.
An incredible agency for sure.
Yeah.
And your oldest and your youngest have ties to the Parks and Recs here in Santa Maria. Your oldest through the grandchildren.
Yes.
And your youngest through FSA.
Yes. And they all, everybody's participated in programs. I think one of the things that Julie and I have kind of impressed upon them is that they need to serve. They need to give back to the community in some way or another. So my middle son does a lot of video for local groups. He's working on some stuff for our Kiwanis Club and things right now. My wife and I are in the same Kiwanis Club, so that kind of helps out. And then our older son is, coaches his son's team in baseball and those kinds of things. And then my daughter, like I said, she's everywhere. She's always doing something interesting.
That's great. So the whole family is engaged
Yes.
with serving and giving back. And let's go there now. We were talking earlier about the Red Cross extensively, and you're still involved with the Red Cross, but other organizations as well. I'm going to list a few that I know of. You can please fill in. Kiwanis Club, the Santa Barbara Foundation, obviously the Red Cross, and Special Olympics, and the United Way are a few.
Yes. So when Special Olympics wasn't on my radar until I came to Santa Maria as an organization. And one of the jobs that I inherited when the other gentleman wasn't able to come back to work was Special Olympics. And it's a program for individuals with intellectual disabilities. It is a sports program, and it's a competitive sports program. Back then, it was really just kind of a program. It was something else that I had to do in my job description here. You're in charge of Special Olympics, and you do it. But over the years with the organization, we've tried to grow that program to be something a little bit more meaningful for the local athletes. And we have a unique situation here in that we serve also Lompoc and Santa Maria for Special Olympics programs, so we don't have that city boundary kind of a thing. And the Special Olympics raises its money to operate its programs and services. The city is a sponsor, and so as the rec department, we provide them with office space and professional staff to make sure it happens. So that's been a neat relationship.
Yeah.
I'm a member now of the Special Olympics Southern California Board of Directors, so it kind of gives me a little insight in the management side of that organization.
And the importance, really important.
And the others, United Way, I was on the board for several years here. This what is Smooth Inc. now? It used to be the Santa Maria Organization of Transportation Helpers way back when, and I was on the board of directors there for a number of years. I mentioned Youth and Family Center to you, but probably my busiest time was being a member of the Santa Barbara Foundation trustees.
Yes,
that's a 9-year commitment that we got to see a lot of opportunities for other nonprofits to secure funding to address some of the social needs that we have in the county. And we were able to, or I was able to be part of the selection committee that brought Ron Gallo in as the new CEO for the foundation a few years ago. And that kind of took that organization into the next century. I think his selection was good timing, and they just do great work. So yeah, I mean, again, my Kiwanis Club, we're busy all the time. We meet every week. We just finished our Queen campaign. We raised over $270,000 or $260,000 in 8 weeks, you know, to give back to the community. So that was pretty cool. It's just so many things going on in this town that, you know, people say, oh, there's nothing to do. And I said, I wish I had one weekend where I didn't have something to do.
Yeah, that's right. So you are very busy contributing to the community in multiple different ways. One way you were recognized in contributing had to do with the Santa Maria Arts Council.
Oh,
and they had a showcase recently of grant awardees and honored you in terms of your support of that vision of arts for Santa Maria. So tell us about how you feel about that honor.
It was totally unexpected and certainly not even well deserved, because I think that, you know, when I got the call and was told about it, I said, you know, the problem that I have with that is that I really haven't done a whole lot. I mean, I wish I had been able to do more. I mean, the projects that we see art-wise happening in the community are because the artists have stuck to it to make sure that those things happen. I just look at it as that in leisure, which is more than just recreation for, you know, individuals who are into the arts, the performing arts and the visual arts, you know, that's how some of them make their living. So it's not a leisure thing for them.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to take that and make it something that is a leisure activity, you know. Mm-hmm. So from the rec and parks department perspective, it's hard to make the jump. Mm-hmm. So what I was fortunate to do is to have a staff member who's on board, Dennis Smitherman, and Dennis has really kind of poked me and kept reminding me, you know, we got to do the arts, we got to do the arts. And it's always in the back of your head of something that the community needs. You know, all the things that people tell you about the arts, that, you know, it builds community, it fosters knowledge, it makes people think, you know, it forces them to think about things. Those are all really important elements. And so we said, yeah, you know, we need to do some things. So we worked on an arts master plan. Mm-hmm. And that was a group of concerned citizens in the arts, and then also council members and some local developers that were pulled together to try to create a way to fund the arts through new development. As the city grows, that's a missing component. We have parks, you know, we have schools, maybe not as many as we need, but we have those elements out there. But the art seems to get lost in the shuffle. So that's why we pushed it out there, and I guess that's why they decided to recognize me. But again, I think we're just trying to do our part.
Well, we appreciate the part that you play. The arts are so important, and so is all that recreation that you provide through the Parks and Rec Department, and 40 years of support, service, and hard work. You are a leader of a ship, a tiny and mighty ship that's really supporting
That's good. I'm going to use that one.
Do use it, and, you know, really supporting the community as it grows. And really appreciate, Alex, today how you've traced the path for many different paths, actually, for Parks and Rec, the city of Santa Maria, your own life and story, your family, and really the impact that what you do makes on the community. It really matters, that arts, the parks, the recreation, the fun, the sports, the outdoors. So yes. We all, on behalf of the community, thank you, Alex. Really appreciate it.
Hey, no, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Local Leaders.